Hello, 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 Diva. All right, so again, I'm doing my marathon. Hello, and this is probably my sixth or seventh take tonight. But anyway, we're in this new year, and I'm just trying to get out some of the topics that I have been meaning to speak on. And so I just wanted to go ahead and get those done since I have time. And this topic, this particular set, is about names that melanated people should think twice about before calling themselves. So, I need to go into a little bit of history and a little bit of etymology. And again, as I tell people, don't believe anything I say. All right, go look this stuff up for yourself. Now, it is not my style, if you will, to be pulling up all this stuff and, showing you and reading it to you. You can do that for yourself. I'm just here to tell you what the information is, my research shows, and then you can go and pull it up for yourself and then research it and then come back and let's have an informed discussion. Yeah. All right. So again, I'm getting into these terms that melanated people tend to call themselves, and we're not understanding the etymology or the history of them or where they came from. So I want to get into this first one, because this is a big one. Black, the term black, it's like we black power, we black people, and black women, and black whatever. All right, listen, let's understand this term black. And when we get a chance, let's do some etymology. I'm going to give you what my research is showing, and then you go and look it up for yourself, because I'm not going to do that for you. When we look at the term black, first of all, we find out that black is we would say it's a relatively new term, 500 years. It's not an old term. And the term black is derived from the terms bleak, or Blake, B-L-A-E-K or B-L-E-A-K. Look up those terms. That's where the term black comes from. And what those terms mean is pale and without color. Pale and without color. All right, that doesn't describe anything dark. Pale and without color, bleak. That's where the term black comes from. And when we look at how it was applied legally, the term legally means someone who is not indigenous to the Americas and someone who is illegal to the government. So we need to understand that as I talk about the original Americans, they were melanated people, woolly-haired people who were copper colored. And so we have to understand where these terms come from, because the term white is a term that was applied to melanated people. It meant rulers of the land, because they were the original people here. They rule the land. It meant purity of blood, and that had to do with the fact that they were not mixed with other animals or beings like the Albion. And again, this is not a diss, because I love all my people, but when we're looking at the fact is that that purity of blood was dealing with melanated people, and that's what the term white meant. It also meant people who were indigenous to the land and who were not illegal to the government. All right. So white was mostly applied to your melanated people. The term black was applied to your non-melanated people, your Albions, because again, they were the people who were coming from other lands. They were not indigenous to the land, and hence they were illegal to the government. Those terms, black and white, have nothing to do with skin color. They have everything to do with status. And so we need to understand, you know, the terms of the word. Here's the other thing, you know, we need to. Is somebody calling me? I'm not answering. We need to understand the terms. We need to understand the terms, or what the American language is, or the English language. We need to understand where that came from and how it came about. Now, with the English language, it was, first of all, it was created by melanated people. You know, we get told that, oh, it's the white man's language, and the white man, the Caucasian, or the Albion did not create the language. They didn't create the laws. They didn't create the religion. None of that. That came from the melanated people. And the language was originally created by melanated people, and it was purposely this jumbled up, right? Because see, we got to understand that words, all words, they have a, how do we say, a vibration, all right? And the language was created purposely with a negative vibration and taught to the Caucasian, all right? See, again, when we understand true history, then we start to understand how we got into this mess in the first place, and then how to get out of it, all right? We need to understand the true history. Melanated person created the jumbled English, ass backwards English language, and purposely taught it to the Caucasian for the purpose of keeping them off balance spiritually. Because once again, these words have vibrations. If you notice with the English language, a lot of the terms, when you, okay, here, I'm gonna give you one. One of the terms that I mentioned that melanated people need to think twice about calling themselves is Aboriginal. We'll take Aboriginal for example. Ab means not. Original means, of course, the origin. So when you say Aboriginal, and then you got all these melanated people running around, yeah, we the Aboriginals, we the Aborigines, we the well, you're saying you're not original. Again, that's part of the English language. It's made to throw you off balance. Every time you're speaking this language, if you're speaking the language, you're telling a lie. All right. And so we have to understand that when we're speaking what we're saying, added to that, all right, there is the legal part of this that we're not understanding when we're taking on these terms. But let me finish up with this part where I'm talking about this language and how it messes with you spiritually. Because when we're saying these words, we don't understand, for example, black. That is a term that really means white or off-white or not even dark. It means pale and without color. So we're running around using this term black, and we're not understanding that it has a spiritual vibration. So we're speaking it, and so we're not understanding that, you know, every time we're using it, not only are we damning ourselves from a legal perspective, we're damning ourselves from a spiritual perspective, and we're using a term that does not describe us in any way. But we're strong on black power. And there's a lot of, even with the term black, a lot of studies that have been done with it that show what kind of negative vibration it has on your very being. All words that we speak, they have a vibration. And because we don't understand what we're saying, we keep damning ourselves. All right, so that is, you know, that's on those two, Aboriginal and black. And again, we understand what black and white meant. Please, once again, go and look them up. Don't look them, if you look them up in the dictionary, you're gonna find what black means niggers, or Negroes, or whatever they have to say. That is not where the term originated. You need to do the etymology on it and look up the terms from a legal perspective, because they don't have anything to do with skin color. And when you use those terms also, from a legal perspective, I'm going to go into my legal session right after this one, but when you use those terms from a legal perspective, you are also making it clear that you don't know who you are. When you say you're black, I'm a black person, and what you've said legally is I'm illegal to the government and I'm not indigenous to this land, and I don't have any claims to any land here in the Americas because I'm black, because I'm from somewhere else. All right, that's what that means. Let's take the term African American. Now, this is another new term, came into play with Jesse Jackson, who's a supposed black leader, and he coins this term African American. Well, once again, let's understand the term African. African was a term that really was originally applied to Caucasians. Let's understand why. Now, I spoke in the last video about how the Moors, mainly from my research, British Moor, excuse me, were kidnapping a lot of Caucasians from different countries. Europe was one of those countries where a lot of Caucasian children were being kidnapped and enslaved in the Americas. Now, at that time, Europe was Africa. And when they would bring these non-melanated people here, they were called Africans. This is why, see, I'm going to give you, especially some of you Moors, give you an understanding of why Moors, especially under the Noble Drew Ali, they'll tell you they did not call themselves African, even though they were from Africa. Morocco is in Africa, the northern part of Africa. But why would they be so hell-bent on not taking on the term African? Because it was originally applied to Caucasians. African was, and so now it's a political term now because, you know, because, you know, again, all of Asia, all of what we know as Middle East, all of Africa, what we see on the map is Africa, all of that was Africa at one point. And again, Europe was Africa at one point. And so now that they've changed the names and, oh, it's Middle East and it's Asia, and then they made this part here, Africa, where you had a lot of melanated people. Well, the term now is a political term. And now they're associated with melanated people very much like they associate the term black with melanated people, when it used to be a term associated with Caucasians or non-melanated people. So that's African, and then you got American. The thing about American and African, when they start talking legal terms, you're supposed to take on a nation. I won't go deep into that at all, but they want you to have a nation, because if you don't have a nation legally, you're considered a stateless person, all right? You don't have, and then that means you're an orphan. That makes you a ward of the state. So when you claim, not only that, once again, when you're claiming Africa, you're claiming another territory, land that's not here. You're saying I'm not indigenous to this land. So Africa is not even a nation, it's just a corporation, all right? It's just a corporation. And if you're not claiming a corporation and you're trying to do business with these other corporations like the United States Corporation, then you're saying I don't have a state, I'm stateless, I'm an orphan. And so you're making yourself legally an orphan to the state by calling yourself African or African American, because you haven't claimed a nation. Because Africa is not a nation, it's a continent. America is not a nation, it's a continent. So you're saying African American, you just said I'm an orphan, and you said I'm black, and you said I'm not indigenous, and you said I'm illegal to the government. So you put yourself in a shit box. That's what I call a shit box when it comes to a legal shit box. That's what you got. And so this is why it's important that we understand these terms that we're taking on. Oh, I'm African American. You're saying that you are not indigenous to the land and you don't have any claims to the land here. when you're truly indigenous to the land. And this is, you know, by getting us to take on this title, for example, African American or Black, it is removing us from our inheritance. Once again, in the previous videos, I talk about all of the treaties of the original Americans of this land, because we've been made to think we come from Africa. We don't understand that we are the original people of the land, and there are treaties and land patents in the names of our ancestors who we don't even know to call. Go look up the treaties, and I will be glad to put it up here. The treaties that speak about where our ancestors, you can hear our ancestors speak. You don't have to read somebody's book and hear their interpretation of what the treaties up here right now, so that you can go and look them up for yourself, and view them. Let's see. So I'm putting these treaties up. So these treaties are important because these are the names of our ancestors. These are the names. If you're going to take a name, find out what territory you came from, and then take on the name of your ancestors, because I'm going to go through this list about these other names and where they come from and why you want to be careful about taking them on. Colored. All right. Colored means fictitious person. Look that up in the legal dictionaries. It means fiction. So when they talk about colorable law, it's fake law. A person of color is a fictitious person. That would be, as a matter of fact, this was a term associated with non-melanated people, your Albions. Once again, we're going to take on the term slave. I'm going to go ahead and go through that, because our people say we're the descendants of the slaves, the descendants of the slaves. Let's understand what the term slave meant. The term slave is derived from the terms Slavic and Slovakian. Okay, those were non-melanated people, Slavic and Slovakian. Do your research, do the etymology on the term slave, and you'll see where it comes from. Those were non-melanated people, because Caucasians and Albions, rather, were the original slaves in the Americas. And that term, slave, was applied to them. Now, one of the things that we have to understand when we're looking at what you're saying is that you're a descendant of the Caucasian. Well, as soon as you say that, you're also saying I'm Black. You're also saying I'm from somewhere else. You're also saying I'm not indigenous to this land, because the slaves were not indigenous to this land. All right? So this is why the term colored was also applied to the Slavics, or the non-melanated people, because it meant a fictitious person. They weren't real. They weren't considered real people. Why? Because they were mixed with other beings. They weren't fully human, and the ancestors knew that. This is not a diss. Once again, this is scientific fact. This is scientific fact. And so that's one of the reasons why Albions were never meant to be citizens of the United States. Okay, because we have this whole idea that Caucasian wrote the Constitution. No, they didn't. They didn't write any laws. They didn't make any languages. They didn't write any religions. None of that. All that came from melanated people. And as I said, you know, melanated people created this stuff, then put it on the Albion, and then guess what? The Albion turns around and uses that same thing melanated people created to keep them down against the melanated people. Ain't Karma a bitch? No, she's not. You made her a bitch. Because when we've done these things in the past as ancestors, and we thinking, oh, it's our ancestors, we paying for it. No, you paying for what you did and for what we did. And so once again, these terms, they're being switched around on us because we put them on them. So colored was once again a term that was associated with your Albion, And it means fake person or fictitious person, a person that has no rights, nothing in this country legally. All right. Another term, Negro. Negro was originally, once again, term for Caucasians. Where did it come from? Let's go back. Once again, I mentioned briefly about how, and I talked a little bit about this in the other sessions, how the Caucasian was created from the melanated person. All right, I won't go deep into this, but genetic splicing has been around since before the creation of these vessels. And as a matter of fact, the human vessel is nothing more than genetic splicing. It's a product of a genetic splicing. Well, the original beings that were humans that were genetically spliced were your melanated people, your carbonated and your, copper-colored looking people. They were your original people. And what ended up happening is that these beings that were doing all of this splicing wanted to splice melanated people with other animals. There's something about the carbon or the melanin in these vessels that will not allow for splicing them with other animals. All right. So in order to get that, they had to specifically target that gene that creates melanin and keep it from creating melanin so that they can go and create this non-melanated being so that they can then splice it with other animals. Well, once they did that, then they started splicing it with things like the ape and the chimpanzee, which was originally called troglodyte Negro monkey. All right. So what happened to that name? That was the special name, troglodyte Negro monkey. That's what the chimpanzee originally was called. Well, guess who? Since they were spliced with the monkey, that's what they were called, Negroes. That was Negro. If you go do your research, you find out Negro was really a term applied to most slaves. Well, at that time, most slaves were Caucasians. So Negro was a term that originally was applied to the Caucasian because they were the ones who were spliced with the troglodyte Negro monkey. And then they became slaves. And then they were named after the being that they were spliced with, Negro. And now melanated people want to run, we're the Negroid race. Negro was referring to the chimpanzee, which is what they're spliced with. But you want to take that term on Negro. Okay, fine. So now we get into the term nigger. I'm not even going to go, because with this one, we get these terms where it's, oh, well, nigger means something positive. And nigger, okay, listen, if you want to call yourself nigger, that's fine. But as we see it, we have issues with Caucasians calling us that. So why would you want to call yourself that if you got a problem with them calling you that? So if you want to use it, that's fine. Again, the term Indian, let's look at this term. Now with the term Indian, there's an issue with it only because it is a term that is, how do we say, it has been incorporated or used by the United States corporation. It's kind of been deemed in their contracts where if somebody's calling them an Indian, they put themselves under, if somebody's calling themselves an Indian, they put themselves under the jurisdiction of the United States corporation. Pretty much like when you say I'm African American or I'm colored or black, when you use those terms, those are terms that have been coined by the United States corporation. And so especially when we're dealing with legal situations and you have declared yourself Indian or what have you, well, if you're saying you're Indian, you have to be careful because Indian is one of their terms. So one of the things that these Indian people on Indian reservations are not understanding, like they think they are full nations, like I'm the nation of this or the nation of that. But what happens with these Indian nations is they find out that they're incorporated under the United States Corporation. Well, if you're incorporated under the United States Corporation, you can't be a true nation, because a nation can't sit under a corporation, which is a dead, fictitious entity. It's a business entity. If you're a nation, that's a living entity, and you cannot be sitting up under this nation. Now, the thing is with a lot of these Indian nations is, as they sit up under them, they're thinking they have sovereignty. But then the United States comes in and knocks them down, and they don't understand why. Well, it's because you were incorporated. Your nation was incorporated under them. If you're getting benefits from the United States Corporation, you're getting any kind of money, you own some land that they set aside for you, you are really a citizen. You are nothing more than their property. And so your nation, if it's incorporated under them, is their property. And if you get out of hand, like there was some story I read about some tribe that had their sovereignty revoked, which is bullshit. You can't have your sovereignty revoked. What happened was this nation, this Indian nation, was incorporated up under the United States Corporation. They started getting, wanting to take control and wanting their power nowhere. And then the United States Corporation came in and said, "Oh, let me hip you something," and they called it revoking their sovereignty, which really what it was they were. The Indian Corporation is just another company, a company that sits under the United States Corporation. That's all they were. They're just a company that sits under the United States Corporation. And so the United States Corporation just took all of their privileges away from them. That's it. And so because we're not understanding that, we get into thinking, oh, the United States does not have that kind of power. They don't. It's a corporation. And so I'm going through these names so that when I get into the legal side of this, when we start talking about contract law, so we can understand where we stand and who we are, then we can, we can better understand what's going on with these terms that we're using. So that's Indian, and why you want to, think twice about using that. Not to say you're not an Indian or that makes you anything less. But again, the term is coined by them. And if you're using that, especially in a legal sense, then you could be putting yourself under their jurisdiction to some degree. Aboriginal. Once again, as I spoke about already, ab means not. So that you think you're saying original, but you say, oh no, I'm not original. I'm far from original. That's what ab means. All right, citizen. Let's understand, a citizen is a slave. A lot of us, don't like that term. One want to hear us, I'm not a slave. Well, yes, you are. You call yourself a citizen of the United States Corporation, you're a slave. Why is that? Okay, first of all, when you're saying you're a citizen, again, you're putting yourself under their jurisdiction. As a citizen, you only have what are known as privileges. You don't have rights. And so you have made yourself by calling yourself that. They've tricked us into doing it, yes, but at this time, there's enough information out there for us to start understanding what these terms are that we're choosing to call ourselves. But when you say you're a citizen, then you said, I am a dead, fictitious corporation that belongs to the United States Corporation. You said you're a slave. And so, again, this is why we need to start understanding law. We need to start understanding these terms. I won't go into citizen deeply here, but look it up. Look up the legal definition of citizen. Again, instead of running to the dictionary and trying to find it there, you need to start going to the legal term. These legal books law books and trying to understand what these terms are, because when you're using them from a legal sense, this is when you're putting yourself in a negative situation. Another term is minority. Now, what we need to understand about this term minority is that when we look at the term minor, like what does the term minor means? That means someone who's under the age of 18 who doesn't have rights to vote. They don't have legal standing. They're now, from a legal definition, that's an idiot. That's someone who is incompetent, someone who cannot stand. That is a fool. That is a moron. That's what minor means. Now, when you take the term minority, they want you to think it means minus in numbers, like minus fewer in numbers rather. All right, so there's more Caucasians, they're the majority. And really, the Caucasians are not the majority, they're not. But that's what they want you to think. Oh, the Caucasians are in the majority, but they're not. And they want you to take on the term minority. Oh, melanated people are the minority, but that's not, when you use that term, what you're saying is you're an idiot. You don't have legal standing. You can't stand for yourself. You're a moron. So this is why you going into court and you talk, I'm a minority or I'm black. You're an idiot. That's what you said. So look up minority from a legal standpoint, because it doesn't have anything to do with fewer in number of people. So you understand why you got places like Chicago or Atlanta, and the melanated people are the majority of the people, but you got them calling them minorities. What the hell going on? Well, when you understand what the terms mean from a legal standpoint, then you understand what they're really saying in the media when they say, yeah, the minorities are out here picketing and rioting, and the idiots, the people without legal standing, the morons, that they're out here picketing, because that's what the term minority means. Doesn't have anything to do with minor, fewer in numbers. It has to do with your legal standing. Moor. Let's look at the term Moor. Now, I've said this before in the last presentation, but the term Moor is a verb. All right, they want to tell you Moor means it's this America and Moor, and they're not the same. All right, the term Moor, because I'm gonna go ahead and break down Moor, M-U-U-R, and M-O-O-R. M-O-O-R is a verb, and it has to do with a job done on a ship. Look up moored, M-O-O-R-E-D, and see what it means. Look up mooring, M-O-O-R-I-N-G, and they have to do with jobs on a ship. All right, and that's important to understand, because again, the Moors that were coming into the land, they were sailors. They worked on ships. And so what ended up happening is the vast majority of them were melanated. So then this term Moor gets applied to melanated people, much like the term black, much like the term African, much like the term colored, that never had anything to do with the color of skin at all. It's just a term that ended up being applied to most melanated people, and now melanated people are, let me tell you something. When that term was originally applied to melanated people, it wasn't a term of endearment. Those Moors were vandals. They were pirates, land-stealing thieves. It wasn't a term of endearment. Oh, it means black. That's not what the term originally meant. It meant land-stealing thieves who did things on a boat. That's who they were. They were pirates. And so now here we are. They're telling everybody to apply. Oh, you're a Moor if you black. Well, if you want to believe that, if you want to be black and be a Moor. But the truth is, the term originally had nothing to do with the color of the skin. It had to do with people who did things on a ship. Let me talk about M-U-U-R. M-U-U-R, Mer, was a term applied to the melanated people coming out of the land known as Lemuria or the land of Moor. That's what the term M-U-U-R. They were the Washita Moors are the oldest known living people on the planet, supposedly. Washita Moors were people who migrated out of Lemuria into the Americas. The Moors were land-stealing pirates that came out of Britain and Morocco, people who sailed. So now we got to understand these terms because, again, you know, you get a lot of narratives about coming from the Moorish camps, but there are things they're not telling you. If you're supposed to call yourself Moor, why isn't it that they're telling you about all of these patents that took place in the 1600s and the 1770s, took place before the 1770s between Britain and the original people? Why aren't they telling you about those? Those are the original names of the original people of the land. Why is it that not one of those treaties talks about Moor, Morocco, Al-Moroccan, Al-Morocco, Moor, none of that, no Moors, they didn't call themselves Moors. Why is it that you won't find not one word about any of that? But they want you to call yourself Moor. Here's the deal. I put the documents up so that you go and do your research on the treaties yourself. Their land patents in the name of the original Americans. And those are the names that, if we are really serious about taking back any kind of land and being at peace in this land, those are the names that we need to be calling, the names of the ancestors, the foremothers, because the original tribes in all of the Americas were matriarchal. And so we are not honoring our foremothers because we are not taking their names. We got people in here trying to get us to call ourselves Moors, which is a pirate's name of land-stealing people. And as a matter of fact, the term Moor is a maritime word. That means that it's dealing with the sea. And one of the things about maritime, anything dealing with the sea, you can't own land. But you want to call yourself a Moor. You might as well call yourself Black, African American, colored, Negro. And go ahead and throw nigger in that too. Because all of those are terms that have been placed on you as a people, and you still don't know who you are. Read the treaty. Listen to our ancestors speak. You don't have to listen to somebody else's story. Do your own research. Read the treaties. They're speaking. And when you hear them speaking, you will understand the bad deals that they made. You understand the things that they did that they should not have been doing. Because when, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to get out of here. When the British Moors were coming in here selling these children, these Caucasian children in this land as slaves, when they were doing that, they were selling them to the original Americans. That's who they were being sold to. That's who was selling them. And so all of us took part in the enslavement of the Caucasians, the males and the females. Because you had the Moroccan Moors who were bringing the Caucasian women in as concubines, putting them in Moorish bathhouses, had them in there naked, running in and out of there, raping them at will. So, you know, we all took part in it. And we need to understand these terms that we're taking on so that we can start, you know, honoring our ancestors. Our foremothers, honoring the ancestors. That's the only way we're going to ever see peace. All right, Dee Laree, I'm out.